All right, so today we're going to be talking about the payroll overview. We're going to be talking about the documents that you need and a brief little demonstration of how you need to complete the items for your payroll. And then if you have any questions while we are going through the webinar, please type them in the chat pod and we will get those answered for you. All right. So as we get started today, I'm going to be your guide, and we have Natasha helping us on grabbing questions and making sure that everybody is getting their questions answered. And hopefully we have Sheila Sloan and John Barr on the call, and we will be getting answers for you if we do not have them ourselves. So today in this webinar, we're going to be talking about getting ready for the payroll, doing the payroll, the reporting that you need to do, and your questions and answers. And as we are going through, we do have some things that are working, and we are working feverishly at getting more of them ready for you to use. So initially, everyone in your organization needs to be set up as a workforce partner. If you are not already set up as a workforce partner, you need to contact WorkNet. And Lacey has been working hard at making phone calls to all of the partners whose grants have been approved so that we make sure that everybody is set up. But you need to set all of your staff up who need to be able to see reports and enter payroll. So those all need to be, all those people need to be set up so that they can access. And right now it's under the Getting Started section and Identify Staff. You just have to click into illinoisworknet.com SYEP 2013, and if Natasha can put that in the chat pod for everybody, that would be very helpful. As a recap, the things that you need to do is, this is a sample from the wireframe when we did the mock-up of the website. And as you can see, there you will be able to access the student data that has been entered. And the tools will be available by the end of the week. Under the tabs, you can see the youth participant, the employers, the contacts, and the other information that you need, as well as the payroll upload in those tabs. So we will continue to release the pieces as they become available. And Natasha just put in the website for the SYEP guide where you can get all of the information, and that is a period between www and Illinois WorkNet, not a comma, just in case you didn't catch that when you're copying and pasting. Also, as part of our recap, this is the data that you will see on your sheet when you are looking at the youth's information, and it will let you know whether or not it is eligible and enrolled on your status of that youth. So that your staff can identify whether youth are eligible or not eligible, they'll need to go to this this section of the SYEP tool and make sure that they are marked as eligible or not eligible, and whether they are enrolled or they were declined or they're not suitable, any of those items, and then, of course, which program that they are included within. And make sure that you run the reports so that you know the number of your actual applicants versus your program, your anticipated enrollment numbers. Okay, this is another example for you to include your work sites. so that you can select your employers. And so what you need to do is you need to enter all of the worksite information. You need to link the youth to the worksite, and then you need to enter the number of youth, either full-time or part-time. The screen on the right here is the actual, and then the screen on the left is the actual numbers where you have start dates and end dates and whether they're full-time or part-time. That's where you enter that information. And then the screen here on the right is what your planned is, so that you always want to be making sure that you're keeping up with your planned full-time and your planned part-time youth. You don't want to end up at week 5 of the program with 15 out of 40 of your youth. This next sheet is about your timesheets, and this is the timesheet that is required. If you pay on a weekly basis, you just modify this timesheet to reflect a weekly timesheet. If you pay twice a month, that's okay. You can adapt this timesheet to reflect twice a month. But do not go longer than twice a month with your payroll because DCEO wants to make sure that you're keeping up with your payroll appropriately. Now, just a couple of things on here. Whatever the youth works here is reflected here. So these numbers here are work experience. And then that total is here for total of week 1. And then what they're doing for work readiness is reflected here. The two numbers are added together and come into the week 1 total. Now, from a previous webinar, we spoke about the fact that you can, as the grantee, determine how you want to prepare the work readiness with your youth and have it set up. The risk is that if you front load all of the work readiness, you may lose the youth, and then you are over the 10% of the work readiness to the work experience. So you want to make sure that you have everything so that you're within your 10%. And we found out from some of our questions and answers on Tuesday's webinar that we just want to make sure that you're staying as close to that ratio as possible of 10% of work readiness compared to the work experience. Moving on, the file that you need to upload for payroll is these column headers. So as you are creating your columns for your CSV file, use these header items, pay period, end date, and notice that they're all smashed together in one word. First name, last name, the last 4 of their Social Security number, the work site, hours worked, hourly wage, and total gross wages. And as you're entering the information, it will give, these are the way that you need to enter it. Now, be mindful of the fact that however you have entered the youth data is how you need to enter it in the timesheet. So if the youth goes by John, not Johnny, then you need to enter it as John. If you enter a work site as White Oaks Mall, you need to make sure that you are entering it into the CSV file as White Oaks Mall, not just White Oaks. Let's move on to the next slide. And we just want to make sure that you are checking the names, checking all the names, double, triple, quadruple check everything. But don't worry, if you make a mistake, all you have to do is make the correction, delete the file, and re-upload the new CSV file. Again, if you have a youth that's working at multiple work sites, the hours need to be broken out by work site. So if John Smith works 12 hours at White Oaks Mall and he works 12 hours at the state library, those would be on your CSV file in 2 separate lines. And what you see here is an example of the file that needs to be uploaded. And remembering that the header files on the different items are all one word, one word, one word, and that each of the items are written out exactly as you have entered them into the data file. So if we have Natasha Kidman or Chelsea Anderson, then that's exactly how you wrote those names in their file. Again, the information that you enter must match student and worksite records, or else they will not work in the payroll tool. And when you are saving the file, you have options so that if you save the Excel file, you'll name it as a file name. You'll save it as a comma delimited file, so a CSV file. My suggestion to you is to name the payroll upload as the week that you're uploading it. The DCEO will want to see those Excel spreadsheets, and when they come around, they may even check it more than just a monitoring time. And you also need to keep the timesheet documents in a file as well. So always keep your records for the payroll sheets, the timesheets, as well as the payroll upload documents. All right, reporting. There is many, many, many reports that you are able to check to make sure that you are keeping up with the different items that are going to be required or are going to be monitored. So are you keeping up with entering your data? As soon as the tools are all up and available, DCEO will be checking that you have the information entered that you need to. Did a youth drop out and you need to replace one of them from the pool? Have you entered all of your work sites? Are the site review documents in the paper file? Have you connected your youth to a work site? What if someone moves to a different work site? Did you change that in the system? Are your youth full-time or part-time? And how do those numbers compare to your plan? Where do your applicants' count fall in relation to the plan numbers? So if you planned on 40 full-time youth and you only have 18, what are you doing to recruit those additional youth? And if Natasha can type the recruitment section, the link to the recruitment items into the chat pod, that would be very useful. We, from one of our previous webinars, we do have flyers and postcards that you can use to recruit. How many pre-assessments have the youth completed? Do you have a plan to get them all to complete them at one time? Are you doing it in a workshop? Are you doing it on a one-by-one basis? Have any of the youth completed their post-assessment yet? If not, how do you plan to have the youth do that? Will you do it in a classroom style, or will you do it one-by-one? What is your plan for them to watch the violence prevention webinars that are taking place on July 30th at 10 a.m. and 11 a.m.? Those are different webinars, so you need to make sure that you have a plan in place for them to either watch them live as a group or watch the recordings and then determine how you're going to have them complete the activity related to that. You just do not want to come up in week 5 of the program and realize that you're down 15 youth. It would be very hard to overcome that opportunity that you may have missed. So begin to get into the habit of checking your progress several times during the week so that you know what you're doing and so that you will be able to exceed the monitor's expectations at the end of the program. So before we get to the questions that we have, we want to cover just these points that you need to remember. Make sure that your Workforce Partner account is available so that you can access the tools. Make sure that your work sites are set up and your youth are associated with the work site. And then make sure that the youth timesheet is used to collect the hours that are worked. And then use the reporting tools so that you know what your numbers are. Just to let you know, we have our first Q&A session scheduled for today at 1 p.m., our technical assistance webinar. We also have our violence prevention webinars scheduled for July 30th. We have our soft skills webinars scheduled and will be released today. They are happening on the 16th, 18th, 23rd, and 25th. So just to make sure that if you want to include that in your work readiness activities, those will be available for you, and we will be recording those. So that's that for the formal presentation. Let's go to the questions that we have and see what kind of questions you have for us to answer. So our first question that I see on the list is, do the youth have to record a lunch if they work over a certain number of hours in a day? And yet the answer is yes. If they work longer than 5 hours in a day, they will need to take a minimum of 20-minute unpaid lunch break so that they will record that on their timesheet. Let's go back to the timesheet slide so that you can see where they will time in for the day, they will sign out for lunch, they will sign back in from lunch, and then they will sign out for the day for their total hours. And it's anything over 5 hours. They are required to take a 20-minute unpaid lunch. All right, next question. If the part for the youth is released and we can't see it or are having problems, who do we need to contact? And that would be Illinois WorkNet to make sure that you are set up in the system properly. The other thing is, do you have your WorkNet partner account set up properly? So you would want to make sure that you're in touch with Lacey at Illinois WorkNet. Or you can email info@illinoisworknet.com. Christine asks, I need to create an Excel spreadsheet to upload the file. Yes, and you can do it in Excel, whatever spreadsheet program you're using. It needs to be saved as a .csv file. And those, in most cases, that is from Excel. Our next question is, how do we get reimbursed for the employer portion of FICA? Do we include it on the payroll CSV file upload? No, the FICA payments will be included in your additional monies that you submit for reimbursement, the employer portion only. The gross wages that are included on the CSV file include the youth's portion of the FICA, so you will need to submit that FICA portion at a later point when you submit your supportive services monies.
LaDonna, this is Sheila.
Sure.
Hello.
Sure, go ahead.
And I want to answer the first part of it. We are still working out the details on how we're going to have the grantees report to us the additional costs once you get to the point that you need the additional money after over and above what we're going to front load you with, the 30% that we're going to give you as an advance. But we're still working out those details on exactly how we're going to work that out. And as soon as we know how we're going to require you to report that information to us, we will put an email out to everybody.
All righty. Where on Illinois WorkNet may I find hard copies of webinars? Um,
Hey,
Natasha,
Steve, I had just added a note that I will add a page that will include all of the handouts and everything that were used, as well as the archived webinars. Right now, if you go to the online guide, the SYE, onlineworknet.com/SYEP guide, then there is a link there for the archived webinars, and I will make sure I add a page with all the related materials on that page as well. So,
like the PowerPoint presentations and handouts that we had.
uh-huh.
All right. All right. Very good. All right. Southern 14 asks, the procedures manual under payroll disbursement states that the grantee must submit the hourly wage plus the employer's FICA and workers' compensation in the CSV upload. Is this still true? Sheila, can you answer that question?
No, that we don't want the employer's portion. We just want the youth portion on that upload into WorkNet. I'm trying to find it in the procedures manual right now, but the employer's share is going to have to be treated separately. And I can't find it right now. Here we go. I found it here. Yeah, I don't know why that's in there, but I don't think that we intended them to include the employer share in there, because it has to report it on a completely different line of costs on GRS. So that may have been a incorrect statement in the procedures manual. All we want on there is the youth information and what the youth is contributing for those pieces.
All right, great. And then Dan asked, do we know when the employers and worksite tabs will be available? And Natasha answered that they will be completed this week. All right, so does anyone else? I see a few people are typing, so we want to wait just a moment just to see if we have any other questions. Sheila, do you want to answer just a couple of questions that we had from the last webinar? What about the state unemployment tax?
Yeah, no, we do not. These participants are exempt from that.
All right, and we have a question about eligibility. If the youth are out of school for the summer, college, or high school, are they eligible to be out of school youth 16 to 24?
Good question. Is John's phone unmuted?
Natasha, can we unmute John?
Can you state the question again?
The question is about eligibility. If a youth is out of school for the summer,
right,
either college or high school, are they eligible to be out of school youth, 16 to 24, or is that for
if they're still
high school dropout?
Yeah, if this, I mean, I think the program hasn't specifically defined in school versus out of school, but generally you can use a kind of a K through 12, and so if they're continuing on into the next year or so, if they're in high school or whatever it is, and they're continuing on, then they're in school. If they're planning on enrolling in the fall, I would also consider them in school. Generally speaking, an out-of-school youth is someone who isn't planning to go back to school in the fall. So they've either graduated or graduated, and perhaps they're looking at um, college or other opportunities, or perhaps they've dropped out. So there's no hard and fast definition, but generally those are the parameters, and we've got some flexibility as far as transferring between the categories, but you need to let us know that because those numbers will be in your scope of work.
All right. We have another question here. Are participants swipe upon exit and entry? I think that means like a time card swipe. We were under assumption that we only needed to specify amount of time spent on work readiness. Do we need to have a separate swipe time for work readiness?
You need to document the time that the youth are being paid, so and their attendance. So I would recommend that you include that. I mean, it would it would make sense that any hours that they're being paid for, you need to have documentation of a time in and a time out.
Okay, so on the let's go back to the timesheet, John, and take a look. Are they putting work readiness time into the timesheet? So,
That would make sense. Yeah,
No,
I mean,
not the way the timesheet's designed.
mm,
All we had them do was just put the amount of time for that week spent on work readiness. Just
at the
the number
bottom.
of hours.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
so these hours that are recorded here are only for work experience, and then this box right here is for work readiness. So then the total from work experience plus the hours from work readiness will be added together to give them a total for the week. So as a number example, if a youth works 25 hours in work experience and they put in 5 hours on work readiness, the total in the box here would be 30.
Right.
Is that
Right.
right, Sheila?
That's the way I understood the timesheet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.